So there's this big housing bill making its way through the US Senate right now. And believe it or not, one tiny little rule tucked inside has absolutely everyone talking. It's supposed to make homes more affordable, but here's the twist. Critics are screaming that it could actually do the exact opposite. All right, let's get into it.
And this is really the question at the heart of it all. This new proposal basically puts a stopwatch on how long certain landlords can even own a home. It's a really bold move, and it makes you wonder about the government's role in the whole housing market.
Okay, so what is this rule that's causing such an uproar? Well, it all boils down to a ticking clock, and that clock is set to a very specific number.
7. Yeah, that's it. This entire firestorm of a debate with supporters and opponents totally at odds, it's all about the number 7.
Okay, so here's the deal. This rule is just one part of a much bigger bill called the 21st Century Road to Housing Act, and it takes aim at a very specific target: big-time investors who build whole neighborhoods of single-family homes just to rent them out. The industry calls it build to rent. And if this rule passes, those investors would be forced to sell off every single one of those homes to regular people after only 7 years.
So you have to ask, why would lawmakers even come up with something like this? Let's take a look at it from their side. What's the problem they're actually trying to fix here?
Well, the goal itself is pretty simple, and honestly, it sounds great, right? The thinking goes like this. If you force these big companies to sell, you suddenly flood the market with more houses for everyday people to buy. And basic economics says more supply for buyers should, in theory, help cool down those crazy high prices and make buying a home a reality for more people. And believe me, this idea has some heavy hitters in its corner. The National Association of Realtors, they're all for it. They're calling it a meaningful reform and saying it's a practical way to boost supply, bring down costs, and open the door to homeownership for more Americans.
Okay, but that's just one side of the coin. The pushback, especially from the people who actually build houses and analyze the market, is intense. They're basically saying this plan is going to blow up in everyone's face.
And this, right here, is the whole argument in a nutshell. The supporters are picturing a future with more homes available for people to buy. But the opponents, they see a future where fewer homes get built at all. They think the so-called solution will actually make the original problem a whole lot worse.
So here's the critical piece you need to understand. Building houses takes an insane amount of money, and developers need to get loans for it. Now, lenders give them that money based on how much income they can make from rent over the long term. But if you start this ticking clock and tell an investor they have to sell in just 7 years, well, the entire financial model falls apart. It suddenly becomes way, way harder to get the money to build anything in the first place.
And you know, the home builders aren't just mad about the rule itself, they're also mad about how it got in there. Ken Wingert from the National Association of Home Builders says this whole thing was just dropped in at the very last second, completely derailing what had been a really productive, collaborative effort.
So what's the worst-case scenario here? Well, according to housing analyst Rick Palacios Jr., the outcome is pretty clear. If you make it harder to finance and build rental homes, you're going to stifle the creation of new housing. And when you have less supply but the same amount of demand, prices go up. Affordability gets even worse for everybody.
And then you have some analysts who are, let's just say, not holding back. Tracy Reiniak over at Zacks flat out called it the dumbest provision she's ever heard. Her logic is brutally simple. Big landlords just aren't going to build anything with this rule in place. The result? Less housing. Period. For everyone.
Now, it's really easy to get laser-focused on this one super controversial rule, but it's so important to remember that it's just one piece of a much, much larger puzzle.
Yeah, this Road to Housing Act is a big piece of legislation, and it turns out not everything in it is quite so polarizing.
For instance, Redfin's chief economist Daryl Fairweather highlights a totally different part of the bill that a lot of people think could actually help. It has these measures to cut the red tape around building and financing manufactured homes. It's a completely different way of tackling the housing supply problem, one that's all about making things cheaper and easier, which many see as a huge step in the right direction.
So you've got these really powerful arguments on both sides of the issue. Where does that leave us? Well, this bill is moving, and a decision is coming up fast. So really, it all comes down to this one question. Is the 7-year rule going to help, or is it going to hurt? You've got the supporters, like the realtors, saying it'll free up homes for buyers. Then you have the opponents, the builders and analysts, saying it'll just stop new homes from ever being built. And the pressure is on, because the Senate could be voting on this as early as this week. And that kind of leaves us with this big final thought. The housing crisis is a massive, complicated issue, and everybody agrees we need to do something. But this whole debate just perfectly captures the fundamental challenge of making policy. How do you step in to fix a huge problem without accidentally setting off a chain reaction that creates a brand new one, maybe even a worse one? That's the question senators are wrestling with right now.